Brett Okamoto with ESPN here to discuss today's breaking news. UFC President Dana White goes on the company's YouTube in an interview that they produced in-house and says that he is out of the Cris Cyborg business. He no longer wants to sign her to a long-term deal. He is done trying to set up any rematch between Cris Cyborg and Amanda Nunes, that she is free and clear to sign with whomever she wants. Now, it was no secret that Cris Cyborg fought out her contract last week at UFC 240 in Edmonton. It was a big storyline going into that fight against Felicia Spencer. Cyborg won via unanimous decision, and even though she never said that she was closing the door on re-signing with the UFC, she did make it clear that she wanted to test free agency. She wanted to field offers from other promotions, see what her value was on the open market. And what Dana White is essentially saying here is, go out and do it. Feel free to go out and do it. We are waiving any exclusive negotiation periods that we have, any matching rights that we have with you. You are 100% clear and free to go off and sign wherever you want with whatever promotion you want. Okay, a couple things stand out from this. First of all, this is not a surprise. I think a lot of people saw this coming at least for the last month, 2 months, probably going back even further. I mean, this relationship has not been a great one, really, since it began in 2013 when the UFC signed Cyborg to a promotional agreement. I think that stems from a lot of things. Some comments that Dana White had made earlier about Cris Cyborg and her career. Just a very fundamental difference in opinions of how she should be promoted. I think initially the UFC looked at Cris Cyborg as a potential foe to Ronda Rousey, the much bigger star at the time, the 135-pound champion. Of course, Cris Cyborg saw herself as her own entity, her own brand. She's a star in her own. She needed her own weight class at 145 pounds. The UFC was reluctant to do that. Finally, in 2017, they did introduce the 145-pound weight class, and even then, the two sides continued to bicker and butt heads over who Cris Cyborg should be fighting, how exactly to build that 145-pound weight class. And for all of the reasons that I just mentioned, I think long-term this is probably a great thing. The UFC and Cris Cyborg are parting ways. I think that they could come to the table in agreement and get some business done together, as they have shown. I mean, she did come in here and she did have big fights against Holly Holm. She'd have a very big fight against Amanda Nunes, obviously. But I think moving forward, they were going to continue to butt heads. They were just never going to get on that same page of how to build that division and how to market Cris Cyborg. Now, short term, this is a big disappointment because I feel very comfortable in saying that the rematch between Amanda Nunes and Cris Cyborg, that potential rematch, is the biggest fight that any promotion could put together in female MMA right now. I know that Amanda Nunes went out there and knocked her out in 51 seconds, but you're talking about a woman in Cris Cyborg who had arguably been the greatest fighter of all time up until that point. You get caught in this sport, sometimes that happens. If they were to fight again, would the same thing happen? I don't know, but we needed to see it. You know, we needed to see Cris Cyborg come off of her first loss in more than a decade and have a chance to redeem herself and to beat the woman that defeated her in December. That is now not going to happen, and that is a big loss. But I do think, as much of a loss as that is, the long-term benefits of these two just not having to try to get on the same page when they just aren't, it probably outweighs it. And as far as the ugliness here, of this split in which Dana White going out and putting out this interview on the UFC's YouTube channel, I know that in his mind, he's probably just setting the record straight and giving his side of things and explaining his decision to not to waive any matching rights with Cris Cyborg. It does feel like he's sort of bashing her on her way out of the promotion. But the same goes for Cris Cyborg. Some of the videos that she had posted in recent weeks, in fact, even on Friday, she issued a public apology to Dana White for misrepresenting something that happened backstage. All of this is just more evidence as to why these two sides should split. So to me, the big question now is, where does Cris Cyborg land? I think that there's a tremendous amount of value in her name and in her brand, of course, but she does represent and bring some matchmaking challenges that the UFC did not lie about. They did not make those up. It is difficult to find and promote fights for Cris Cyborg simply because the state of women's MMA right now is just the talent at 145 pounds in those higher weight classes is very, very thin. So Bellator MMA has made 145 pounds a bit of a priority for them in recent months and this recent year. They do have an established champion there already with Julia Budd. I would look at that as the most likely landing spot for Cris Cyborg, but there's also PFL that I think would make a whole lot of sense for Cris Cyborg. PFL has that tournament format, that regular season format. It would ensure that she would fight a certain number of times per year. And they also have Kayla Harrison, a 155-pound fighter, undefeated. That would be a big fight if they were ever to meet in a season or a tournament finals in PFL. I think it would be very interesting to see where Cris Cyborg lands. disappointing to not see that rematch with Amanda Nunes, but I do think long-term the positives outweigh the negatives in these two sides.
Hello, everyone. It's Ariel Helwani. I just came here to thank you for watching our ESPN YouTube channel. It's the best. You know what else is the best? The ESPN app. You can get highlights, analysis, all that stuff and more. And if you want premium content and live streaming sports, there's only one place for all of that. It's ESPN Plus.